They say when you talk about the dead too much, they start listening. I thought Amaka's story ended the night she vanished. But in Lagos, stories don't end. They hide in the corners, waiting to be heard again. I'm Amara, and this is part 2 of Cursed, Amaka's untold modern folktale. You're watching Legend by the Fire African Folktale. Before we begin, subscribe, like, and share this story so the fire never dies out. They say, Lagos never forgets a secret, it just buries it under new noise. For months, I told myself Amaka's story was behind me. I changed my number, redecorated my apartment, and even started going to church again. But you see, the past, the real kind, it doesn't fade because you stopped mentioning it. It finds you when you're not looking. It began again one evening in June. Rain was falling, that kind of slow, moody Lagos rain that makes the city quiet for once. I was driving back from work in Victoria Island when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I don't pick such calls, but something told me to. I said, hello. Silence. Then a woman's voice, faint, calm, familiar. Amara, she said. My hand froze on the steering wheel. Who is this? She didn't answer directly. She just said, you kept it safe. Thank you. The line went dead. I pulled over immediately, shaking. The only thing she could be talking about was the bracelet, the one I left at that church. I told myself it must be a prank. But then I remembered. I never told anyone I took it there. I went to that church the next morning. The pastor recognized me immediately. He said, my daughter, you came late. I asked, what do you mean? He told me the bracelet was gone. He said one of the junior ministers noticed it missing 2 nights before during the heavy rain. They assumed he misplaced it, but then they found a white petal, just one on the altar. He showed me. It was dried now, but I knew that scent Jasmine, Amaka's perfume. I left that place without saying another word. I went home, locked all my doors, and didn't sleep that night. For 3 days, I kept hearing soft knocks on my window. Not loud, not frantic, just like someone tapping gently, waiting to be let in. But I live on the 3rd floor. That was when I decided to talk to someone, not a pastor this time. I called an old woman who lives in my mother's compound in Surler Mama, Ithioma. People say she sees things. When I told her everything, she was silent for a long time. Then she said, my daughter, sometimes the dead walk not to harm, but to be understood. She told me to go back, not to the church, but to where it started. To Port Harcourt. I hadn't been there since university, but I took a weekend off and traveled. Something in my spirit needed closure, or maybe just truth. When I got there, I started with the church Amaka mentioned, the one her lover pastored. It took me a day of asking around before someone finally said, ooh, you mean Pastor Nuka's church? That one way closed down since 2018. I went there. The building was abandoned, walls cracked, windows broken. But there was a mural on one side, half faded, of a man and a woman standing together under a dove. And I swear, the woman looked like Amaka. While I stood there, an old woman approached me. She said, you are not from here. I nodded. She smiled faintly and said, you came because of her. I asked, who? She said, the girl who loved the wrong man. Her name was Adaze, not Amaka. That name struck me. I said, are you sure? She nodded. Adaze Nduka, pastor's younger sister. My heart almost stopped. Sister? I asked. But Amaka said she was his lover. The old woman looked at me, eyes cloudy but sharp. Lover, sister. Both can break you the same way when trust dies. I didn't understand then, but I recorded her words on my phone. She told me Adaze was accused of witchcraft after her brother's death. The congregation turned on her, said she killed him through envy. She ran away. Some say she died on the road to Lagos. Others said she never left. When I asked how she looked, the old woman said, fair skin, quiet eyes, always wearing white. That was when I knew. Amaka was Adaze, but maybe not alive. I left Port Harcourt that evening. The road back felt longer than it should. I kept checking the rearview mirror, not because of thieves, but because I felt, watched back in Lagos, I found her name online. There was an old article pastor's sister found dead in river after accusations. The photo was blurred, but the dress, that same white one. For days, I couldn't focus. Every time I tried to sleep, I'd hear her voice, that soft, slow tone saying, "Not everything that hides is running." I started to remember things she told me before she disappeared. How she said, sometimes guilt doesn't leave, it just changes form. How she always avoided mirrors at night. And how she never ate food from anyone's hand, not even mine. Then something happened that made me realize the curse wasn't about her anymore. One night I was at home, no light, just candlelight and my phone flashlight. The candle flickered strangely, even though there was no breeze. And then I heard her voice again. "Amara," she said, "I didn't mean to give it to you." I turned off the light, trembling. "Give me what?" I whispered. But she didn't answer. The next morning, I found the jasmine petal on my pillow. That was when I realized I had inherited something. Maybe not a curse like hers, but a connection. And somehow she wanted me to finish what she couldn't. So I went back to her house in the one she left. The new tenant, a man in his 30s, said he'd only been there 2 months. He looked uncomfortable when I mentioned her. He said, "Madam Abig, if you know that woman, tell her to come carry her box." He pointed to the corner of his sitting room, a dusty wooden box, padlocked. I opened it outside. Inside were old photos of Amaka smiling beside a man who matched Pastor Nuka's photo online. Letters, love notes. And under them, a Bible with a pressed jasmine flower between the pages of Psalm 91. I took the flower out and burnt it. And that night, I slept like a child for the first time in months. It's been almost a year since then. No knocks on the window. No whispers. Sometimes I still smell jasmine when I pass certain streets, but it feels different now, softer, like memory, not haunting. I've learned something from all of this. Curses don't always mean black magic or evil spirits. Sometimes they are the echo of pain moving from one soul to another until someone brave enough decides to end it. Amaka or Ades wasn't evil. She was a woman swallowed by rumor, guilt, and betrayal. And maybe all she wanted was for someone to finally know her truth. So I tell it, because in this Lagos, where everybody is rushing and pretending, some stories must be spoken so they don't repeat themselves in another name. If you ever meet someone who carries silence like a burden, don't call them cursed. Listen, because sometimes listening is the only thing that breaks the chain. They said the curse was broken. But in Lagos, silence never means peace. If Amaka's shadow still lingers with you tonight, light the comments below with your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Legend by the Fire African Folktale, because every story told here leaves a spark, and some sparks refuse to fade.